Hello everyone and welcome to All Things Watched. In this video we are going to talk about the finale of The Ones Who Live, which was episode 6, which was titled The Last Time. And this episode was absolutely a tearjerker. It really delivered on a lot of aspects, really. I know I did read online, a couple of people were a little disappointed with how quickly things were moving along and all that good stuff, especially with like the CRM and General Beal and all of that good stuff. And I totally get where you're coming from. I can totally see why you might think that, or why you think it might have been a little rushed, especially considering that they didn't really renew this season for a season 2, and at least as of right now, it does not appear like there's going to be a season 2. So I totally get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I thought it was done really well. You know, if you're not going to have a season 2 or continue Rick and Michonne's story in their own solo series, then I think that it ended in the best way that it possibly could, and all of that good stuff. So let's go right ahead and jump into The Last Time, and we'll jump into the scene by scene breakdown and then give our final thoughts at the end. So the episode actually opens with a very beautiful scene with Rick and Michonne lid down, and this whole series was very centralized around their relationship. It was very much a love story, kind of like a Romeo and Juliet in this post-apocalyptic type world. And so it's really just a beautiful image, beautiful, scene with the two of them just loving each other and, being in bed with each other and holding each other and just, sort of making love and all that kind of stuff. And it was just a great way to open the story, because it's really a great way, really shows them reconnecting. Rick has sort of lost himself a little bit, throughout this series over the past, 10 plus years or however long it's been, or 8 years, and so it was just a really great way to open the finale, but it also had me a little bit worried because it made me think that maybe, this very well could be the end for one of them, if not two of them, considering that they've sort of been hinting the entire time that this could be their final outing, even the name of the episode itself being called The Last Time, and all that good stuff. But anyways, it opens there like that, and so they start to make a plan, and then as you see, they end up, the plan basically is that Rick will go into the CRM, into this base, and he will get that certain report that he was going to try to get off of Beal to see what the CRM's plan actually is, and while at the same time Michonne would end up going and trying to destroy the evidence that Jadis said that she had left in her room. And so you see here Rick coming up to the gate, and he sort of surrenders himself, and then once he comes in, he's greeted by Thorne, and of course Thorne is very happy to see him. She's really she actually really believes that he's back for good. She even says stuff, like, I knew that you'd be back, so to speak. She's like, kind of like, I knew you'd be the right person for the job and all that kind of stuff. And so he just sort of plays the game because he's trying to get information to find out what is going to happen. So after Rick ends up meeting Thorne, he ends up going then out and meeting Beal. And this is a really cool scene as well, because we learn here that Beal was not somebody who had to sort of apply for citizenship. He says, in fact, he actually says he's never actually had his citizenship. So I think that's a very interesting story to be told all within itself. I would love to see a series, or like a mini series like this one, to be told all about General Beal, all about the CRM, to see how he came into this position, to see how all of them came into their positions, him, Jadis, everybody. I think it would be so cool to explore that character, to see how he got there, especially opening up about not actually having a citizenship. So it was really cool to see that, really cool back and forth. And so this is when Beal sort of, basically confesses to Rick that he wants to sort of level him up, and he tells Rick that he's very confident in Rick, and he's very happy that Rick is, a part of this and whatnot. And so this is sort of when he makes, makes the decision that he's going to share the briefing with Rick. And so then in the meantime, Michonne is over here in Jadis's room, and she's trying to find the evidence, and she looks around everywhere, and then eventually she does find the evidence, which is inside of this like little art thing that Jadis ended up making, which I thought was a great callback to the junkyard, because as we know, back in the junkyard in the main series, Jadis was always very artistic. She was always making these little sculptures and these little statues and whatnot, and so I thought it was really fitting that all the information that she had about Alexandria was stashed in one of her little statues and one of these little pieces of art. But at the same time, I was also kind of like, well, it's a little bit obvious, you know what I mean? Like, to keep something so secretive here inside of this statue that you can sort of see through. It's pretty transparent. So I thought it was a little silly that she would keep it here. It would have been more believable, I think, if she had have kept it like inside of one of her canvas paintings or something like that. But instead, she just left it here in this very transparent statue. But either way, it was really cool as well. You can see the picture of Gabriel here hung up on the wall. So clearly, Jadis, you know, was really painting pictures of Gabriel, and she really did care about Gabriel quite a bit. And so Michonne ends up finding the piece of paper, and she reads it, and sure enough, all the information is on there about Alexandria. I'm pretty sure she probably had even more information on there as well about stuff besides Alexandria. I'm sure she had stuff there about the Saviors, about the Sanctuary, and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, obviously Michonne is only concerned about Alexandria and whatnot. And as far as I know, Michonne does not even know about the Commonwealth either. I'm pretty sure she was gone before Alexandria ended up meeting the Commonwealth, before our heroes end up going there and sort of having that war slash scrimmage against the Commonwealth. So, you know, I don't even think, I'm not even 100% sure if the CRM knows about them or if Jadis knew about them. She probably did, but I don't really know. But it would be still very interesting to see all the same. But either way, Michonne gets the evidence, and then, of course, she ends up ripping it up. But she also picks it up, too, because at first I was thinking, you know, why would she rip it up here with pieces of it falling on the floor? But then she ended up picking it all up. To me, I would have just shoved it in my pocket, got out of there as quickly as possible, and then probably just burned it somewhere. But either way, you know, it is what it is. And so then we end up coming back to Rick, and he's now in General Beal's office, and this is when we start to get the briefing, when General Beal starts to talk about, you know, starts to give him all the information and whatnot about what the CRM is planning to do and what it is that they want to do. And of course, we end up learning here that, you know, basically the idea of the CRM is that Beal basically tells Rick that the CRM has this sort of you know, statistic or calculation that within the next 14 years or so roughly, they suspect that the human civilization will be overcome by the dead, and that everybody will pretty well go extinct. And so we also learned that the CRM is very concerned about resources, as we already know from the TV series World Beyond. If you watch World Beyond, they did a lot there, which this show actually connects to World Beyond quite a bit, especially with Portland, how they took over or destroyed one of the alliances, and then they're talking about now moving in on somebody else to basically destroy and take over another, you know, part of the alliance or another big cities, so that they can take their resources and basically keep it for the Civic Republic and then also the CRM themselves. So, of course, obviously, Rick is not going to be okay with this. However, Beal does give him sort of like an ultimatum. He's like, hey, you know, you just tell me who your friends are. He's like, hey, I know that you are trying to escape to go back to somebody. He's like, if you just tell me who those somebodies are, we'll protect them, we'll keep them safe, and we won't hurt them once we basically go and do this full-blown ground invasion all across the country. Now, there are a few things that was said in this conversation, which I do think was worth noting. Beal did say that the CRM was international. He did say that it seemed like they had outposts all over the world, because he does say something along the lines of something being international or global, which could be a great tie-in to Daryl Dixon and Daryl's series. He's over in France. A part of me was wondering the entire time, was France a part of the CRM, or at the very least connected to the CRM in some way, or at least in communication somehow with the CRM? Are they communicating with them? We also know that the CRM was experimenting with the walkers and the zombies, and so was France. We know France had the variants because they were once again, sort of experimenting and trying to learn stuff about the walkers and whatnot. So the fact that Beal said that the CRM is sort of global and more so on an international level, it makes me think that maybe the company that's, you know, sort of fighting against Daryl Dixon over in France, it could be somehow related to the CRM. not necessarily this group of CRM agents, but still, a part of the CRM in general. And also did a great job at showing how wide and broad the CRM is, and so the CRM could still be an an over looming threat to the overall series. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm not 100% sure if AMC will do more with the CRM or if they won't. But it'll be very interesting to see if or how any of this ties in to Daryl. I do think Daryl is facing a group that maybe is connected to the CRM. I mean, they do experiments on the zombies. We know that the virus, or at least I think the virus, began over in France, and also the people over France that was fighting against Daryl was, lined in armor and wearing uniforms that were very similar to the CRM. So I would not be surprised if they are located over in France as well. In the meantime, Michonne is still looking around, and she ends up coming across this little bunny, and of course this is sort of a reminder to her, about sort of reminds her of her own children. And so I think she gets a little bit of a feeling here, which is a little uneasy, the fact that there's just this random teddy bear here. So she ends up looking around, and she ends up going into a certain briefing herself, or where somebody is giving like this mission briefing, and sort of showing all the objectives here on the big screen and showing specific targets and whatnot, and basically saying that they're going to kill everybody except a very small percentage of children. They're even telling the CRM soldiers, what to say and how to act, with these children. Once, if they sort of fight back or if they sort of question everything, you just tell them that it's all going to be okay, everything's going to be okay. This obviously strikes a nerve with Michonne, and so she can no longer handle it, and so she just sort of gets up and storms out of there, because obviously, she herself has children, and she just can't imagine anything happening to her own children, which is also something that was sort of reoccurring throughout this series. When she was trying to bring Rick back and get him back to her side, she was constantly saying, God forbid something happened to my children. I came all this way to save you. I hope nothing happens to the children, and whatnot. So she obviously is not going to be able to, let this just slide. And so she, storms off and starts to radio Rick. In the meantime, Rick has finally had enough and sort of calls Beal out, and Beal recognizes before he even moves, because I guess he's so analytic. He's able to analyze Rick's emotion. He can just see the anger on his face, of course. We're sort of getting back to the old Rick Grimes now, the kind of Rick Grimes that would bite your neck or bite your ear off and all that stuff. So, of course, Rick attacks him, and it was really cool seeing here how, Beal attacks him with the sword, but he blocks it with his fake hand. I think in this episode too, when it ends, he does leave the hand there, and I thought that was really weird. I think he should have kept the hand, but it could also be symbolism to the fact that maybe Andrew Lincoln will not come back and reprise his role as Rick, but we'll have to wait and see where everything goes. But I was a little sad that he didn't take the hand, take the fake hand, because it's also a weapon. It had a knife and everything on it, and he's actually really good at using it, and he's even the actor Lincoln has done a really great job at, with his performance, and I guess having to learn how to use it and make it look very realistic and all that kind of stuff. And so he ends up overcoming Beal, and of course he ends up stabbing him first through the hand, but then right through the chest, which ends up killing Beal. And I did think that it was really cool, a little bit of dialogue there where he looks at Beal and he's like, we're not the ones who are dead, you are. And then I thought there's actually a couple of moments in this episode when I feel like they could have dropped the line, the ones who live. I thought there was a scene when Rick and Michonne was setting up the explosives, which happens later on in the series. I thought here with this dialogue with Beal was another great opportunity as well, where they could have dropped the line where he actually says we're the ones who live. And I kind of wish he had have actually said it, and I think it would have been a really cool, just a little nod to the series, and to and also a great callback to the original series, because he does say that in The Walking Dead as well. He does at one point in the original series talk about the ones who live, or he says something like we're the ones who live. So it would have been cool to hear him say that here to Beal, but it's all good. It's not, it doesn't take away from the episode or the series, but I just kind of wish he had have actually, verbally said it. And then, so in the meantime, he ends up killing Beal, and he ends up putting Beal's body into this giant container that he finds there, and it was just a really funny sequence, of course. This whole scene was kind of really funny, and also really brutal, because he ends up getting into the elevator with another guard, and of course that guard ends up, seeing the blood drip down, and so Rick literally beats him to death with his his fake hand, which was absolutely brutal and very gruesome. A lot of blood in this series and a lot of very heavy gore and whatnot, which is good because that's the way The Walking Dead always was. And then it seems like they got out of the brutality a little bit, but now in this series they certainly do not hold back. So it was really cool to see him just unleash havoc and really fight his way, literally brutally fight his way out of the elevator. And so then he goes to attack somebody else because he notices another soldier on the elevator, but it turns out that it's just Michonne. And Michonne basically tells him that she has the evidence and that she found everything in Jadis's room, and and that excuse me, sorry. Sorry, folks, I had to take a drink there for a second. But yeah, so Michonne tells him that she got the evidence, she destroyed the evidence, and then of course Rick tells her about the briefing that he attended, and tells her about the information, and of course she tells him about the information as well, about how they are going to go and hurt all these kids and all these different families and invade. And so they end up making a plan, and they decide that they have to take action. I guess that sort of alludes to the name of the episode, which of course is The Last Time. This is going to be their final hoorah, one more time, do what Rick and Michonne always do, and stand up to the evil and do the right thing and try to help these people if it is possible. And so they end up setting out on this plan, and they decide that they're going to have all these explosives, or they decide that they're going to blow up all these explosives, which I believe all these canisters are actually full of chlorine, and this is the same gas, the chlorine gas, which the CRM used when all of Michonne's friends ended up dying, the community that Nat was with and a part of and whatnot. If you can remember back in episode 2, when a lot of her friends end up dying, they were killed off by the chlorine gas, and so this what is going on here. There is a bunch of chlorine gas and whatnot here, so Michonne ends up having this idea where she is going to basically jimmy rig her own form of explosive using hand grenades, and they are going to blow up this entire tent, which would of course end up destroying basically this entire faction, so to speak. And so they start to put all the bombs in place using zip ties and all that kind of stuff, which was something that I was a little bit, I just didn't really understand why. Like, why did they have to put the zip ties and stuff here? Like, why didn't they just, do it a different way? But I guess it makes sense once, I guess that's just how it went. I just thought that there was maybe a little bit more efficient ways that they could have done it. But either way, it was still cool once they get it all together. And then they actually end up using General Beal's body and the other guard that Rick ended up beating up. And they end up using them as a failsafe, so to speak, or as a trigger. They end up tying the rope onto each of the zombies so that they walk out of each side of the tent, and which of course would activate the hand grenades, which then would ultimately activate the chlorine canisters, causing a huge explosion and blowing up pretty well the entire base. Now, of course, while they're on their way out, they end up running into Thorn, which was pretty predictable. I mean, we knew that she was really the only character left. The only thing that I wasn't sure was how it would turn out. Would she actually end up joining them and actually sort of keep her word to Okafor and Rick and sort of try to use her power and use this opportunity, as a means of sort of setting the CRM straight and getting everything back in order, making them be the company that they have always envisioned, to be more of like a humanitarian militia as opposed to take over and kill everybody militia. So I was really on the fence about how Thorn would react. I knew at first she would react a little aggressively and maybe, point her gun at them and stop them exactly like what you see here on the screen, but I wasn't really 100% sure if she would fully, commit to it or if she would actually change and end up coming with Rick. And I kind of wish she had have changed. It would have been nice to get to see Rick and Michonne save at least one soldier from the CRM. We knew Beal was not going to make it. We knew, Jadis was not going to make it. And if you go back to the World Beyond, there was a bunch of, the female soldier in World Beyond, she didn't make it. And so it would have been nice, I think, to see at least one CRM member make it. And I think Thorn could have been a great ally as well in the future. But it turns out that she is fully committed to the CRM and their cause, and so she ends up, basically standing in the way of Rick and Michonne. And then, of course, we get this really cool, and I also thought a very realistic explosion. The special effects for this explosion was phenomenal. I really thought the CGI looked great here, especially for AMC. Not to say that AMC don't have great special effects, but I really feel like they nailed it here. They did a really good job with the special effects, and it just looked so real, and it was so cool. And I really loved seeing the special effects and everything going off here. This explosion was just absolutely phenomenal. It was so cool. And of course, this ends up leaving havoc, but it also ends up leaving behind a bunch of chlorine gas. As you can see here, Rick is trying to fight off a bunch of zombies here, but as you can see, the chlorine gas is all around. Now, this is, if I was going to nitpick this episode, overall, I think that this was the one thing that I did sort of have a little bit of a problem with. I mean, if you can remember back to episode 2, the chlorine gas literally killed all of Michonne's friends, like, very quickly. And even with Michonne herself, when she was breathing it in, she had to sort of take what I think she said it was like a full year of recovery that she had after inhaling this stuff. And here Rick is just with a little tiny face mask on, and they expect me to believe that he's just okay here. His face is not covered, his eyes are exposed, and he's only wearing literally like a cloth face mask. It's not even like a real face mask. It's just like a basically a piece of clothing. And I just really did not buy into this. I did believe it for Michonne and Thorne, because two of them were wearing full-blown tactical masks. As you can see right here, the mask here covers their face and even their eyes and everything. And I just did not believe that Rick would have just walked away from that with absolutely zero lung damage. I don't even believe that he would have been able to fight as good or as well as he did. I just feel like, I understand that we have to suspend, our imaginations and sort of suspend reality a little bit, with these shows. But I just did not buy that Rick would be able to just walk around so nonchalant. And not only that, but also be able to fight and keep up fighting without there being some serious damage to his lungs. But anyways, it is what it is. But as you can see here in this picture, Michonne ends up overcoming Thorne, and she actually stabs her with General Beal's sword. Excuse me. I did really like the fact that she has Beal's sword now, because his sword looks so cool, and it's so just, it's a really bad looking sword in a good way. Like, it's a really badass sword, and I really like how it looks. And I'm really happy that Michonne got it, because she'll actually use it, just like you see here, she'll actually use it as a weapon. And not only that, but it's a cool way to upgrade her weaponry, and give her this really cool sword. It's kind of like on Fear the Walking Dead. Victor had a sword as well. I really liked his sword. And a part of me wonders, was that actually the same sword? But I'm not 100% sure that it is. But it would have been pretty cool if they did tie it into Fear the Walking Dead in that way. So then we get to the very last scene here, and we finally see here that Rick and Michonne did what they wanted to do. They overcome the CRM, they destroyed the CRM, and they ended up overcoming this battle. They blew up the station, stopping them from attacking, and then we end up getting to a radio broadcast, so to speak, because we know that the CRM has radio, they have TV, they have announcements that are done over the waves and whatnot. And so you actually hear the radio station or the news, whatever it is that they use, saying and explaining how all this stuff has happened. And then we learned that there was some form of voting going on where the Civic Republic ends up taking away some of the power of the CRM. They also end up changing a bunch of the rules, saying that now people can openly go and come to and fro freely now with the Civic Republic, which is a huge difference, which is something that we never seen before. And with that, then of course, Rick and Michonne ends up leaving the Civic Republic in one of the CRM helicopters, and I'm not 100% sure, but I could be wrong, but I think this helicopter had a different symbol on it. It had one circle around it rather than three, which is oftentimes used as a metaphor or symbolism for unity or one of something, or whole, sort of like a one world or like a one single unity. Now, I could be completely wrong. Maybe it did have 3 circles on it somewhere else, but I'm pretty sure this helicopter only had 1 circle on it, which was something else that's very different from the CRM. And then, of course, we, right away, I started to, figure out, oh my gosh, are they actually going to do the reunion where Rick actually runs in and is able to meet his children, especially RJ, for the very first time? Even Judith, this would be the first time he's seen her in years and years and years. And then they end up cutting to the scene where you see Rick's gun and you see the radio, and of course this is absolutely Judith, because we know Judith had Rick's gun, and of course we know Judith was on the radio every day as well, trying to hear from Michonne, to speak to her and maybe get updated from her and whatnot, and have updates to figure out where she is. And it was just so cool. I really liked how they edited this scene and this whole sequence in general. And then of course we get what we were wondering, would it happen or would it not happen? But of course it does happen, and we do get the really cool unity and reunion of Rick and his children and his family. And it was so cool because you see RJ here, he's wearing Rick's old hat, which was also passed on to Carl. You see Judith now all grown up, and she still has she has his gun and his holster and all that kind of stuff. And also the actor was both of the actors playing RJ and Judith are both very well grown now. They've grown up quite a bit, since we've seen them last and whatnot. Seems like every, especially when they're at that age, kids, when every year they get bigger and taller, right up until they're adults pretty well. So the change is very noticeable. But it was really cool that they came back. And something else that I did think was really appropriate too for this reunion was, as you can see, Rick is sort of staying back. He's not, he's not in here huddling and holding them right away. In fact, he's sort of a little bit awkward, but that actually makes sense because the scene is a little bit awkward because he's been gone for such a long time. He's never even met RJ whatsoever. So, it's very fitting and very appropriate that he did sort of stay away and sort of let the family come to him rather than him forcing himself onto the kids. And that is how The Ones Who Lived ended, and that was the final scene. It cuts away. We do absolutely get our happy ending that we were hoping for with Rick and Michonne. I really, honestly, truly thought either one of them or both of them was going to die. I did think that if one of them would die, it was likely going to be Michonne, but I was kind of hoping that it wouldn't, because I think that it would have been just such a downer to have Michonne go through all this work to save Rick and then to have one of them die or even both of them die. I think that it would have been such a letdown to the fans, because I think everybody wanted to see everybody return. We really want to see a reunion between Rick and his children, which we absolutely got. And I can see why some people thought that this was a little bit rushed. It was a little rushed, and I can see where you're coming from. But at the same time, if you're only going to do a limited one-time series, if Rick and Michonne are not coming back for season 2, I do think that they ended this the best way that they possibly could. And I do think that it was a very appropriate ending, with only 6 episodes. I think they did a great job at sort of using the first 2 episodes to fill in the gaps. What was Rick doing over the past 8 to 10 years? What was Michonne doing, trying to find him? And then we finally get the reunion in episode 3, but now they're sort of stuck in these circumstances of the CRM and stuck in this, almost like they're trapped. And then of course we got episode 4, which in my opinion, and my opinion of course is biased and it's only subjective, but I do think that episode 4 of The Ones Who Live was probably one of the best Walking Dead episodes of all time because of how real it was. It was very raw, and it took away all the armor, all the toughness from these 2 characters that we've grown to love over the past 10 years, and really stripped them down to the very basics of humanity, which is, of course, their relationship. They were arguing, they were fighting. She was very honest with him, saying, Rick, you're hurting me, you wouldn't normally do this. And so it was really cool that we got that. And then for the last 2 episodes, episode 5 and 6, that was then when we really got to see them, make their way back home, while also stopping another formidable foe, the CRM, and sort of having them, having Rick, Rick having his redemption arc, and then Michonne having her ending, where she gets to see her children, and then also bring the brave man home. And it was just such a beautiful reunion. And I do think that even though the build up to the reunion was a little fast, and it wasn't, maybe as emotional as it could have been. I do think they did the best that they could with only 6 episodes, and I do think that once you actually see the reunion, I thought that, it does sort of make up for the rest of the series if there was something that you didn't like, even the pacing issues. The only thing that I wasn't really a big fan of was the dialogue between Rick and RJ. When RJ's like, I knew you'd come home, and Rick was like, how? And RJ was like, I believed. I thought that was a little corny, but, overall I still loved it. He still got to meet him, and I did really like it when he said, when RJ called him the brave man, and then he's like, yeah, but you can just call me Dad. So that was really cool. And you can, Rick is going to be really good to RJ, just the same as he was with Judith, and just the same as what he was with Carl. I also really liked how much they used Carl in this series. This was the most, I would say The Ones Who Live was the biggest sequel to the main series of all the spin-offs so far, even more so than Daryl Dixon, even more so than Dead City. I do feel like The Ones Who Live was legit, like straight up, like Walking Dead 2.0 for the most part. Obviously it didn't have all the characters, but I do feel like they utilized the main show the most of all the spin-offs. Almost every episode had flashbacks to something that happened in the previous series, and so I do think that if you're going to end Rick and Michonne, or if they're not going to return, at least in the sense of being lead roles for a series, I do think that they ended this the best way that they possibly could. They did give us the happy ending, and that doesn't mean that we won't still see more of them in the future, but I just don't see them maybe coming back as lead characters. I could see them making an appearance in Daryl or something. Like, I could see Daryl's series ending with him coming back home and finding Rick and Michonne. We may even see a little cameo of them in season 2. It's possible. We know that Carol did reach out to Daryl, and she did say to him over the radio that somebody returned. We also know that Fear the Walking Dead ends with Morgan. Morgan says he's going to go find Rick. So I do think that there's a lot of people out looking for Rick and looking to find them way back to these survivors. And so I don't think we've seen the end of Rick and Michonne, but I do think we've probably seen the end of them having their own solo series and whatnot. So I'll be very curious to see what happens next, especially with the Daryl Dixon show. Be very curious to see how France ties into it all. I hope France ties into it all, and it would be cool to see, where will we see the CRM again? Will they become, a problem again? Or maybe now the CRM will be good, and maybe Rick and Michonne will actually use the CRM to help Daryl in the future. That would be really cool too, to see almost like a world war between, the CRM and the faction or the company over at France. It would be really cool to see that, if they have to go to like a world war almost just for the sake of saving Daryl. I think there's a lot of possibilities now. I think, if anything, shows like World Beyond, shows like Daryl Dixon, and shows like The Ones Who Live really opened the door and expanded the universe in ways now where we could explore other things beyond just these characters. We could very well go into different communities, different countries, and really see the end of the world from all sorts of different perspectives. But anyways, folks, that's my review of episode 6 of The Ones Who Lived. Overall, I absolutely love this series, and I hope we do see all these characters again. I would love to see one massive reunion, before it's all said and done, kind of like the Avengers. It would be cool to see all the characters come back one last time, but we'll have to wait and see. But overall, I did love this series, and I can't wait to see the characters again and see where they go, and I can't wait to see the next chapter of the Walking Dead universe. So with that being said, folks, let me know in the comment section below if you like this series, and if you like this episode, tell me why or why not. If you like this video, click the subscribe button, and until the next one, take care.